Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the first love of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Ya Habibi ya Rasulullah.
Ya Habibi ya Rasulullah. So our mother Khadija, actually, subhanAllah, she had, her heart had been deeply broken twice before. She had been widowed and she had adult children. And she was, subhanAllah, still yet this very well sought after, beautiful, noble woman that many people basically wanted to marry her. Also because of her status, because of her noble status, because of her wealth, and because of her beauty. But subhanAllah, she had actually had a dream that she was going to get married to the leader of mankind. And there was one particular time during the time of Hajj, her and a group of women were sitting in a tent. And someone entered into that tent and said, one of you was going to be married to the Prophet of all times. And so, subhanAllah, the other women in the tent said, this is a soothsayer, and so they began to throw rocks. But Sayyidah Khadija took that moment, it was like someone had shot an arrow into her heart. And she knew, something like this is for me. Right? And so, subhanAllah, when she met Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he came to work for her, immediately she said, there's something about this man. Right? And so she teamed up Maysara to go with him. Another one of her workers who had been working with her before said, go with him, on caravans, because now this kind of business that our mother Khadija alayha salam had, and I'll tell you why I say alayha salam in just a minute. This kind of business she had was not just like some small shop. No, this was a woman who had like caravans that used to go from Mecca all the way into Sham and down into Yemen. It's like 18-wheeler trucks up and down the road. Right? In addition to, she was known to have like houses and real estate on the outskirts of Mecca, where she actually used to hide out women who were victims of domestic violence, or women who were hiding out from their husbands who wanted to bury their children alive. Right? And so she used to, subhanAllah, be that cover for them, be that refuge for them. And so when she sent Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and Maysara out on this caravan, she told Maysara, there's something unique about him. Just report to me what, just tell me, tell me about how he is and, how things go. So after, very short time, after traveling with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Maysara comes back and says, Ya Sayyidah, this man, I cannot even explain all the wonderful things that I have seen. His character alone, just his level of honesty and justice and mercy to people is already, subhanAllah, something magnificent and wonderful. It's remarkable. But what I saw beyond that, beyond his business, beyond the way he is with people, what I noticed is that when he walks, there's a cloud that lowers itself and will shade him from the sun. So as he walks, subhanAllah, it's as if the road would meet his feet, right? As if he, subhanAllah, would be gliding. So many people would comment, about him to me. And so, of course, this just began to stir the fire of love in the heart of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha.
Allahu Akbar.
So one day, subhanAllah, after, a long journey, and she's in her office, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wasn't the Prophet just yet, comes into her office, to give the inventory, to report the prophets, this is what's left, to do the things. And as he's talking, she's just looking at him, right? And so he leaves and she falls back in her seat, like, oh, right? So lovesick. Her best friend comes in and like, hey, what's this? What's this? What's going on? I've never seen you like this. And she can only say one word. Muhammad.
Allah.
So then, her friend is like, don't worry, I got you. So she runs out and she starts to ask, like, where did he go? Where did you see him go? They said, oh, he went to the Kaaba, to his normal place after when he finishes working, he goes to the Kaaba, he's worshiping. So she goes and she sits and she waits for him to finish doing his ibadah. Even at that time, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to worship Allah. So he would, she came and she sat beside him and waited. So then when, he finished his prayers, she said, yeah, Muhammad, why don't you get married? And he said, who's going to marry me? I'm too poor, right? She says, well, I know someone who might marry you. He's like, who? He said, Sayyidah Khadija. He said, Sayyidah Khadija? Right? Like, wallah. Right? And she's like, and she says, yes. He said, tell her me and my uncle will be at her house tonight. That night, subhanAllah, the same night that, subhanAllah, she came to the Kaaba to tell him this, that night, subhanAllah, it was known that Abu Talib came to the house of Sayyidah Khadija, and as well, subhanAllah, it was a group of them actually. And so what was known is that, subhanAllah, there would be like some talk about Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his lineage and his virtues and his character, and there'd be some talk about her. And in the course of this conversation, it became known that these two were meant for each other, right? Because the work that she was doing, helping the women, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also a part of Prophethood, right? This organization to help the oppressed, and it was like, these two are meant to be together. As we know, subhanAllah, they have 6 children together, right? But I want to tell you about the last fateful month. So during this month, approaching prophethood, that the Prophet ﷺ began to even hear trees give him salam. He would hear stones saying assalamu alaikum, right? So he began to, actually be more and more recluse and spend more and more time actually contemplating Allah, contemplating the universe, asking Allah what is his purpose. Right? And so subhanAllah, when he would go into the mountains, it's known that Sayyidah Khadija, even at the time she was pregnant, that she would actually climb up. Have you seen Jabal Nur? Right? She used to climb up to the cave of Hira while pregnant when there were no steps paved out. Right? She used to climb and bring him food. And she would sit there some nights and be with him, and they would just talk and chat, and she would tell me, like, what do your contemplations find you? What meditations? What does your heart speak to you? And then subhanAllah, she'd go back. Except for one night, the Prophet ﷺ was in the cave, and as he was sitting in the cave, he felt something grab him and squeeze him so tight. He felt his ribs were going to collapse upon each other, and that subhanAllah, he felt as if when he's taking his last breath, he heard Iqra, right? And then it would release him. He said, I'm not of those who read, right? Shaking, and then subhanAllah, the presence would pick him up and squeeze him again so tightly he felt as if he's choking. And then the voice said again, Iqra, and then it would release him. He said, I'm not of those who read. And then this subhanAllah would pick him up again and squeeze him even tighter. So he felt like, this is my last moment. And he said, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaqa. And the Prophet ﷺ, of course, as you can imagine, what would you do? He ran down the mountain. And he ran, subhanAllah, he ran to Sayyidah Khadija. He jumped in her lap. And he said he was literally shaking. Right? And he said, just cover me, cover me, cover me. And so subhanAllah, of course, she just, would gently, rub him and try to comfort him. And then she tried to get him to describe what he saw. And so then she said to him, she looked him deep in his eyes. And she said, are you worried that you're bewitched? Is that what are you worried? And so he nodded. He couldn't even speak it. He just nodded. And she said, never. Shaitan would never be able to touch you. Right? You are the greatest of all men. You have the greatest of character. You are excellent to your kith and kin, to your family. You are kind and generous to your neighbor. You take care of the orphans. She began to just tell him exactly who he is, and tell him exactly why Shaitan would never be able to touch him. But then subhanAllah, we get a small peek into a little bit of peek into the spirituality of Sayyidah Khadija. So she then says, I'm going to do something, right? And you tell me if you see him. So she tells him, sit to my right. Right? Sit to my right. She says, do you still see him? He says, yes, I still see him. So she covers, like she is, make sure she's very covered. Said, do you still see him? And he says, yes, I still see him. So then she says, come over here to my left. And she removes her veil. Right? And just this part can be seen. She says, do you still see him? And he says, no, I don't see him. And she says, then this is the proof that this is an angel and not a jinn. Right? Because an angel would be shy in front of me. Right? But a jinn would not be shy. A shaitan would not be shy. So what we understand is that our mother Khadija already had a relationship with Allah, that she understood the nature of the malaika and the nature of the shayateen. Right? And so in addition to that, she said, I know somebody who knows something about this. Right? And so she took him to her cousin Waraqa. And so when she took him to her cousin Waraqa, because she knew he's going to know, he's a religious scholar. Right? So she took him and said, this is what he's experiencing. And when he tells him, her cousin Waraqa says, I wish that you were the prophet to the end of time. And I wish that I was going to be alive when your people will persecute you and throw you out. Right? He's literally saying this, what's written about the prophet at the end of time, subhanAllah, this is what's going to happen. But who was there to support him during those times? Our mother Khadija. Radiallahu ta'ala anha alayha salam. So even as we know, subhanAllah, after their children are born and he supported her in her business for 15 years, now subhanAllah, it's like literally the next 15, she's supporting him. Even subhanAllah, when they get exiled, and they're exiled on the outskirts of Mecca, it said that subhanAllah, oh, of course they're starving, but they were, up until that time, they were there for 3 years, and those 3 years, they were being supported off the wealth of Khadija. Right? She was supporting the entire community, bringing them food, teaching her children, subhanAllah, how to serve. So finally, when the boycott was broken, and they returned home, that the Prophet ﷺ, of course, was so happy, everyone was elated, they could finally go back to their homes. So one day the Prophet ﷺ was on the path back to his home, and the angel Jibreel descended, right in his path. And he said, are you on your way? Are you on your way home to Lady Khadija? He says, Naam. He says, she's preparing for you the most beautiful of dishes, your favorite food. Right? And then he says, I want to tell you something. Tell Khadija, Allah sends salam on her. And the angels also are sending salam on her. Subhanallah. So this is something so significant. What is the rank of this woman? Because we're all familiar with the verse, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, that Allah and His angels send salam on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what Allah is telling us to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah and His angels send salawat on Khadija. That's why I say alayha salam. In addition to, subhanallah, she's the mother of all of Ahlul Bayt. She's the mother of Sayyidina Fatima, who is also, subhanallah, the queen of the women of Jannah. So when the Prophet ﷺ told us about the 4 most perfect women, the highest ranking women, the 4 that are most perfect. So there's perfect, there's like the most perfect women. It's Maryam, the mother of Ieasha, Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh, Khadija al-Kubra, and subhanallah, Fatima Zahra. Now what's significant about this is that literally our mother Khadija is like half of the most perfect women. Why? Because of Allah, it's her herself and the daughter she raised. Allahumma salli wa sallam alayhi wa ala. Right? That literally, subhanallah, this perfection, subhanallah, she passes on to our Lady Fatima. And so when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he loved her so much, and it's known, right, how much he loved her, that even upon some of the end of his days, he was known that if he got some money, if he just got, a little bit of extra money, he would send gifts to the friends of Khadija. Right? He would send gifts to her friends, send meat to them, to the point that one day Ieasha got so jealous. Right? She's like, Ya Rasulullah, even now, right? And subhanAllah, he said, this woman, she believed in me when no one else believed in me. And she supported me when no one else supported me. Right? And it's Allah chose her for where my children would come from, where my lineage would come from. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our Lady Khadija. And subhanallah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved her so much. I want to tell you like the level of love. Even if once he picked up a box, and inside the box was the necklace of Lady Khadija alayha salam. And when he looked inside the box, he began to weep profusely. Right? Just the thought of it, just remembering what it looked like on her neck. To the point that subhanallah, he was almost inconsolable for his level of sadness. I want us to think about, what was it about this woman that gained her the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we should say, I need to be like this. Right? I need to be like this so I can also be loved by Allah's beloved.
So what is the next step?
The first thing I want to tell you is, even though this woman was a boss woman, right? She's got big business. She's also, concerned about social responsibility, but she's also got 4 children. If you can imagine, she's running a large household and a business. And the Prophet ﷺ said, but I never heard one negative word from her. She never frowned at me once. Can you imagine her stress level though? Right? You're running a big business. You're running a big household. Right? Your husband, subhanAllah, is a huge community leader. And people are persecuting your husband and everyone connected to him. And your wealth is running out, subhanAllah, to the point of starvation. And still not one negative word. Still not one frown. Not one frown, subhanAllah. What must be the light that comes from the heart of our mother Khadija, alayha salam. So we have to think about this. Right? We have to think about this. That we must be the kind of people that no matter what's going on in the dunya, the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still shining bright within us. And the love for Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is that which governs our character and how we deal with people, even when we are having a tough time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our mother Khadija and bless her to embody her beautiful qualities. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.